Hi everyone, it's Rena. So this video is if one of you has your moon in Scorpio and one of you has your moon in Aries. And I've done a few of these moon compatibility videos, but I haven't really sorted them out. So I'm hoping that I haven't done this combination. I don't think I've done many of these yet. But I'm thinking that I did the sun with these two signs in terms of that compatibility. What is the difference between these kinds of combo videos? Well, with the sun, it's kind of like competing goals in life and, direction in life. And with the moon, it's more of your emotional makeups and how they cooperate with one another or how they clash. So, it's kind of funny because my partner and I both have the sun in Sagittarius and the moon in Virgo. And you would think that if you have the same signs for your sun and moon, that you're going to be totally in sync. But you know what happens? You're having the same experiences maybe at the same time because of like astrological timing. Even if you're not born in the same day, we're not even born in the same decade, let alone on the exact same date. But also you're having the same strengths but also the same weaknesses. So it's kind of tricky that way. You don't necessarily need to have the same signs to be compatible, and if you are quite different, there might be areas where one person helps to shore up the other person. So anyway, let's look at it from the standpoint of these two signs. One thing that Scorpio and Aries have in common is they're both ruled by Mars. Now, in Scorpio's case, there's also the rulership of Pluto. And we're talking about moon signs here, so it is not the person's ruler. But just talking about the makeup of these two signs and, how that plays out. Now, if you ask me to give my opinion on whether these two moon signs are compatible or whether it's a challenging type of dynamic, I would say it might be quite challenging. I'm just being honest, but you have to look at other influences as well. It's not going to just be the moon signs. What are your sun signs? How do they relate to one another? There are so many different factors, and only you know how the two of you get along. But the reason I would say that it could be challenging is because when we look at Scorpio, we're talking about a fixed water sign. And with Aries, we're talking about a cardinal fire sign. A cardinal fire sign. And how that shows up is that with the moon in Aries individual, they can be quite volatile emotionally. In other words, they may fly off the handle. They're too reactive. And you do have to look at the sun sign because that can temper it. If the sun is in like Taurus, for instance, the person may still be quite colorful in their emotions, but they may take their time. They may be a little bit more deliberate. If their Mercury is in Taurus, they may not talk right away, say something that they regret, but they may be very passionate. They may have like that creative spirit and all of the good things that the moon in Aries can have. It's just that with some people, the moon in Aries can be a liability because they are they might have like a hot temper, and they may they may have meltdowns sometimes when things don't go their way. This isn't going to be true across the board, like I said, though. And with the Moon in Scorpio person, it's like what came into my mind is they don't get mad, they get even. If you've ever heard that phrase, that really can describe what, the more lower vibrational types of Moon in Scorpio person. But just in general, having the Moon in Scorpio can be quite difficult because it can be somebody who finds it hard to forgive others for what they've done, and they may even have experiences that are traumatic because Scorpio rules the 8th house in astrology, and part of that is trauma. It is the shadow. And so such a person may, and this can be due to karmic reasons, because the moon can be karma, that I don't want to say attract, that they contract, even that they decide at a higher level to experience certain things. And it has a good side because it can produce a lot of wisdom. And Scorpio is the alchemist, where they can, like the cat with 9 lives, they can reinvent themselves. The 8th house is about death, but it's also about rebirth. So people who have this moon sign can be incredibly perceptive when it comes to human nature. They're natural psychologists. But there can also be that tendency, if the person is not highly evolved, to not only hold grudges, but sometimes to believe that, some people deserve their, instant karma. And if they don't get it, if that other person that does them wrong doesn't get it, they may feel like something is not right. Maybe that life is unfair, all of those things. And it's important to note that if the person has the sun in Scorpio or Libra, or even Sagittarius, something that's close to Libra, they may have inner planets in Libra that enhance that desire for justice. Like, for instance, Mars in Libra, kind of crusading for fairness. But if a person looks at life from a realistic perspective, they may conclude that life isn't fair, but that is done by design, that all is in divine order. Those are two difficult concepts to hold simultaneously as being true, but it works for me. So anyway, when we look at these two emotional natures coming together, we're talking about emotional needs, and we're talking about emotional self-expression. So the person who has the moon in Aries, if that person has a temper tantrum, or they are, otherwise angry, and they don't think before they act, or they or emote, and this person that has the moon in Scorpio person, maybe they say something they shouldn't say to that person, or just by virtue of maybe having a bad temper, that other person, the moon in Scorpio person, may have resentments towards that individual that they don't necessarily share. The person with the moon in Scorpio can be emotionally secretive, where they don't necessarily want to let other people know what they're thinking and feeling. And that isn't necessarily a good thing. I would say that that is actually problematic if somebody acts like that, because they can have a tendency to do things coming from this perspective of needing to feel in control, needing to feel like they have power in a certain situation where they may feel vulnerable. Whereas the moon in Aries person, they may have a bit of a temper, but they may also get over it very quickly. Now, I want to make it very, very clear that when I say temper, I'm not talking about violence on a physical level or emotional violence where somebody is saying incredibly cruel things to people. I'm talking about, just losing one's cool in a general sense, because, there are different levels of anger management issues, and sometimes it can be quite dangerous. So we're talking about the garden variety version. And that type of person, they can get heated and then they can forget about it right away. Whereas the moon in Scorpio person, it's like a roiling, cauldron of all kinds of, I'm trying to say something witchy, something very deep and underneath the surface, that maybe the person, they might even have a poker face about it, but they're still, feeling it very, very strongly. So that can be problematic because the moon in Aries person may be very open about their emotions. That is why they get so heated, because it's like there's no filter there. It's just so immediate. That's what Mars is all about with Aries. It's just like instantaneous reaction. So there could be like both people could trigger the other. One is triggering the moon in Aries person may trigger the Scorpio person, because maybe the Scorpio person had somebody who was very, had anger management issues in their past, and it reminds them of that, and it's unsettling. With the person who is the the Aries, they don't know where that moon in Scorpio person is coming from. And that can make them feel very uncomfortable. They want that kind of openness in a relationship. And they also may be like, just get over it. Why do you always like hold on to things? So, both of these people have their own brand of intensity, and they're showcasing it in ways that both might be problematic. But when they come together, that's where it can get very tricky as well. So does that mean that this relationship is doomed? Absolutely not. The higher versions of these people will be willing to talk about it, even if they have a tendency to kind of have that habitual response. We can change ourselves. There's no question about it. I just like to kind of set the stage for what might be the dynamics and why it may be complicated for each person to understand where the other person is coming from. The moon in Aries person has to realize that the moon in Scorpio person may have been traumatized with that kind of a display, and they have to get their emotions under control and their reactivity under control in a healthy way, not like trying to stifle it though, but to people sometimes think if they, when you say learning how to express anger, that it means learning how to, scream at the top of your lungs. Like that's the way, I'm kind of being facetious, but I think sometimes people assume that expressing your anger means raising your voice. And No, it doesn't. Sometimes you can be the most effective in letting people know that you mean business and that you are royally pissed off by talking like I'm talking right now. And you are like totally under control, but you are like seething inside. You know what I mean? Um, and the person that is the Moon in Scorpio person has to know, has to learn that expressing your feelings, and even when it comes to vulnerability, is being powerful. That the person who is able to do so is showing how powerful they are. And by being secretive, you're more likely than not going to create suspicion in the other person, and they're going to wonder what's really going on, and they're going to find it hard to trust you because you're not being transparent, you're not being open. So yeah, that's what I have for you, and I hope that this resonated. If you would like a private reading, I do relationship readings. I do career readings. I analyze the natal chart. I have, package deals with the transits. I have all kinds of stuff. You can find out more information at the link below. I'm at rainamoonastrology.com. Thank you for listening. Take care. Bye.